"You're fired." The words, delivered with ragged breaths, sliced through the CEO's office like a razor-sharp blade. Just hours ago, Sayaka Tsukishiro had worn a face filled with kindness. Now, however, her eyes burned with a fierce anger. Before me lay a single sheet of paper. It contained information about a company I once worked for. Sayaka's brother, CEO Takahiko Tsukishiro, rested his elbows on the desk, flashing a cold smile. But all of this was part of a meticulously set trap. The truth, no one knows it yet. A small necklace gleamed against my chest. The recording device inside, entrusted to me by Hidaka, held the key. There must also be vital evidence hidden in the brooch glinting on Sayaka's wrist. Soon, the full truth will come to light, and this company will return to its rightful form. The brooch, passed down from father to daughter, will unlock the door to a new era. My name is Yugo Ito. I'm 44 years old this year. I've been working in Tsukishiro Group's planning and development department for 3 months. Before this, I worked for a startup company. Back then, I dreamed of launching new ventures, but reality painted a different picture. The company overworked its employees without overtime pay, and working on weekends was the norm. Workplace harassment from my manager was a daily occurrence, pushing me to my physical and mental limits. It took over 6 months of job searching to find a way out. Every interview chipped away at my confidence, reminding me that switching careers at my age wasn't going to be easy. But I had no choice but to move forward. It's been 5 years since my wife, Chiharu, passed away. Even as she battled a terminal illness, she cared deeply about me until the very end. "You're a wonderful person, and I know you'll find happiness," she had said before leaving this world. Her words have been my source of strength ever since. I quickly became friends with Azusa Hidaka after starting my new job. At 40, she's a seasoned veteran in planning and development, guiding and supporting me with her expertise. She has a gentle personality, but there's a mysterious sharpness in her gaze at times. Tsukishiro Group is one of the leading food companies in the industry. The legacy of trust and accomplishments built by the previous CEO remains strong, and it's a great place to work. The company places a significant focus on training new employees and provides thorough support for mid-career hires like me. "How's the progress on the proposal, Ito?" "Oh, I should be able to finish it today." "Impressive. Your work is always fast and precise. Your previous experience must really come in handy here." I couldn't help but feel a little shy at the compliment, but it made me happy to be recognized in this new environment. One reason I chose this company was its people-first culture. The philosophy of bringing happiness to people, upheld by the previous CEO, still thrives here. This approach is evident even during recruitment for new graduates. The focus isn't just on academic or professional achievements, but on the potential within each individual. The current CEO, Takahiko Tsukishiro, is 38 years old. Though he assumed leadership at a young age, he has earned the trust of the employees. His commitment to supporting the underprivileged, including promoting disability employment, is truly commendable. But sometimes his actions feel off. His tone and expressions don't always match, and his attitude towards subordinates can shift abruptly. It might just be my imagination, but I can shake the feeling that there's more beneath the surface. Life in this new chapter has been smooth sailing so far. The loneliness of living without my wife hadn't changed. Will I ever rediscover the joy of living for someone else? These thoughts occupied my mind as I swayed in the morning commuter train each day. The morning conference room was filled with tension. 20 members of the planning and development team were seated, waiting for the presentation on a new product concept. The moment CEO Takahiko Tsukishiro entered the room, the air grew even more charged. "Good morning, everyone. Let's get started right away," he said. The CEO's gentle smile prompted a synchronized greet from his subordinates. Izusa Hidako was tasked with moderating the meeting. Let's start with Ito's proposal for a new product targeting younger consumers. Standing at the podium, I projected my prepared materials onto the screen. It was a proposal for a new series that catered to the diverse dietary preferences of young people. From market research to the product concept and sales strategy, I carefully explained the thoroughly crafted plan. That concludes my presentation. Interesting proposal, the CEO remarked, but there's still room for improvement. His tone was calm, but I immediately sensed something off. His eyes weren't smiling. Your market analysis is shallow. Dig deeper. A proposal like this could easily come from another company. The harsh criticisms came one after another. Although his points were accurate, something felt wrong. The president's attitude is too callous. You'll need to start over. Please have revised version ready by the next meeting. As he left the room, the CEO patted me on the shoulder. Keep up the good work, Ito. The words felt laced with mockery. In the hallway, I ran into Hidaka, who looked apologetic. Ito, don't take today's meeting too hard. I think the CEO just wanted to provide constructive criticism. Yay, I understand. His feedback was spot on, after all. I immersed myself in reworking the proposal. Day after day, I stayed late, poring over documents until nightfall. One night, as I was about to leave after finishing up, I overheard voices from the CEO's office. Get rid of anyone useless. How many times do I have to say it? The sound of someone crying followed his shouting. In the hallway stood a young employee, trembling. The CEO's office door swung open, and Takahiko Tsukishiro appeared. Ito, working late again, great job. His gentle expression was a stark contrast to the rage I had just heard, sending a chill down my spine. The next day, I noticed even more unusual occurrences. Members of the planning and development team began falling ill and taking leave one after another. Stress is wreaking havoc on people's stomachs. The CEO's pressure is overwhelming. Outwardly, the CEO seemed warm and compassionate, but I started suspecting he was hiding a much darker side. One day during lunch, I was eating in the cafeteria when a cleaning staff member approached me. It was Yamada, a part-time worker. Ito, do you have a moment to talk? She asked. She began telling me about her son, who has a disability. Tsukishiro Group was known for its strong support for hiring individuals with disabilities, and her son had been offered a position. But the CEO suddenly changed his mind. My son's offer was rescinded. Her tearful story gripped my heart. Could the company's reputation for actively hiring people with disabilities merely be a facade? When I returned to the office, a heavy atmosphere loomed over the planning and development department. The employees' faces were grim, their smiles nowhere to be seen. I heard the CEO was reprimanding a young employee late into the night again. Everyone's terrified. Superficial kindness paired with covert harassment. More people began to notice his two-faced nature, but no one had the courage to speak up. The CEO's authority was simply too overwhelming. As the end-of-month deadline approached, I submitted the revised proposal. Taking into account the previous feedback, I had refined it thoroughly. Still not good enough, Ito. Do you think this will pass? Another relentless rejection. But this time, I thought I saw his true intentions. He seemed to take genuine pleasure in pushing others to their breaking point. Later, Hidaka shared shocking information with me. Although the CEO was the previous leader's son, his reputation within the company was not stellar. The late CEO had a daughter who cherishes his keepsake brooch. She's been questioning the circumstances of his death. As I listened, I began to sense the dark undercurrents within the company. Behind the mask of a reputable enterprise, something sinister was stirring. One evening, as I was leaving, Hidaka handed me a small package in the elevator lobby. "This is a necklace with a recording function. It's something my father left behind, and I want you to use it." Why did she have such an item? And why give it to me? My questions only deepened. I was informed by the HR department that I had been reassigned to the sales department. It was effectively a demotion, and it was clear the CEO was behind it. "I understand. I'll carry out my duties to the best of my ability," I replied calmly, showing no resistance. But it was obvious this was part of his scheme. He was trying to distance me from the planning department and diminish my influence. Around this time, the company's atmosphere grew even darker. The number of employees taking sick leave increased, and resignations became frequent. The once vibrant workplace had lost its energy, replaced by an oppressive gloom. Then one day, I helped a pregnant woman who had collapsed in front of the train station. That encounter became a turning point, not only in the company's situation but in my own life. It was a humid morning, marking the end of the rainy season. The area outside the station was packed with people rushing to work. Business people in suits hurried into the station. In the midst of the crowd, I noticed something unusual. A woman in a white dress was walking unsteadily. Her complexion was pale, and she looked like she might collapse at any moment. "Are you okay?" The moment I spoke, the woman crumpled to her knees. I rushed over and caught her just in time. Passers-by stopped and looked on with concern. Supporting her frail arm, I noticed her noticeably swollen belly. She was pregnant. Her thin dress was damp with sweat, and her face was ghostly pale. "Should I call an ambulance?" "I'm sorry, I'll be fine," she replied faintly, her voice trembling weakly. Judging by her slipper-clad feet, it seemed she had rushed out of her house. "We can't leave you like this. I'm calling an ambulance." As I reached for my phone, she stopped me with her left hand. On her wrist was a brooch that glimmered subtly, a design I recognized. "Please, anything but an ambulance." The urgency in her voice hinted at a deeper reason. "All right, then let's take a taxi to the hospital." I flagged down a passing taxi, and the driver, understanding the situation, quickly pulled over. At the hospital, I explained the circumstances and waited in the lobby. By then, her breathing had stabilized, but I still felt concerned. The doctor promptly began examining her. The doctor asked as I accompanied her into the examination room, "Are you her husband?" "No, I just found her collapsed near the station." The doctor nodded, taking her pulse and measuring her blood pressure. "It seems to be fatigue and mild anemia. She'll need to rest for a while." After finishing the examination, the doctor ordered an 4-drep. While the nurse escorted her to the treatment room, I waited in the lobby. About an hour later, she emerged from the treatment room, looking noticeably better. "Thank you for your concern. My name is Sayaka Tsukishiro. I'm Yugo Ito. Please take care of yourself." For a moment, Sayaka's expression stiffened. It looked like she wanted to say something, but her phone suddenly rang. The moment she glanced at the screen, the color drained from her face. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "It's nothing, just a call from an acquaintance." Her trembling fingers ended the call. but her agitation was evident. "Ito, could I ask a favor? Would you take me home?" Her voice carried an air of urgency. I contacted the office to take the day off and decided to accompany her. In the taxi, Sayaka gazed quietly out the window and began to speak. 7 months ago, she had lost her husband in an accident. She was now recuperating at her family home. The taxi entered a luxury residential area and stopped in front of a grand mansion with an imposing gate. "Thank you so much. Please allow me to repay you." "No, really, it's fine." As we walked to the entrance, my eyes were drawn again to the brooch on her left wrist. It resembled the brooch that the late CEO of Tsukishiro Group was known to cherish. But before I could confirm it, I sensed someone approaching from inside the mansion. "Ito, please leave quickly," Sayaka pleaded with a desperate expression. Just then, the mansion door opened, and a man in a suit appeared. "Sayaka, where have you been?" It was Takahiko Tsukishiro. I couldn't believe it. She was the CEO's sister. "Ito, why are you here?" "Brother, this man helped me." "I see. Thank you for your kindness. My sister tends to get a bit nervous." The CEO smiled warmly, but his eyes glinted coldly. That encounter would later change my life significantly and gradually reveal the dark shadows swirling within the Tsukishiro Group. A few days had passed since the incident at the hospital. Though I was busy with my work in the sales department, I couldn't stop thinking about Sayaka. I couldn't forget the brooch on her left wrist or the CEO's icy gaze. One day during lunch, I was eating at a cafe near the Tsukishiro Group headquarters when an unexpected reunion occurred. "Ito, enjoying your lunch break?" "Tsukishiro, it's good to see you looking well." She stood at the cafe entrance, smiling calmly, a stark contrast to our previous meeting. Dressed in an elegant dress, her appearance radiated a quiet confidence, and her growing belly brought a peculiar sense of reassurance. "I'm sorry for troubling you the other day and not being able to thank you properly." "Please, don't worry about it. May I join you?" "Of course, please do." We sat across from each other at the table. Sunlight streaming through the window gently illuminated the coffee cups on the table. "Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about," she said, carefully choosing her words as she began speaking slowly. She shared the story of her husband's accident 7 months ago and how her brother, Takahiko Tsukishiro, had become overly protective since then. "My brother is very concerned about me, but sometimes..." Her voice trailed off, and an unease flickered in her eyes. At that moment, Hidaka entered the cafe, motioning toward me. "You didn't forget our lunch plans, did you?" "Sorry, I just happened to run into Tsukishiro's sister." "Sayaka, it's been so long." Apparently, the two knew each other from before. Hidaka's father had been a long-time secretary to the Tsukishiro family, fostering a connection between them since childhood. "Izusa, it's been ages. How is your father doing these days?" "He's been recuperating since last month, but he's doing very well." The three of us naturally fell into an easy conversation. Sayaka's expression gradually brightened, as if she was finally opening up. After lunch, on our way back to the office, Hidaka left an intriguing remark. "Sayaka, if you ever need help, don't hesitate to reach out, okay?" After that, a curious pattern began to unfold. Meeting at the cafe became a weekly routine, and the three of us started having lunch together regularly. Sayaka slowly opened up, sharing various stories. She shared her love for her late father, memories of her husband, and hopes for her soon-to-be-born child. "Have you decided on a name for the baby?" Yes, Koichi. It was the name my husband chose. As she spoke with teary eyes, I couldn't help but recall the time when I lost my wife. Her resilience in carrying her grief while looking forward struck a deep chord in my heart. Hidaka often observed our conversations warmly, subtly steering the topics to keep things flowing. Her presence naturally brought Sayaka and me closer. "Ito, you're a kind person." Even Hidaka mentioned it. "Oh, not at all. Please don't be modest. I've thought that about you ever since the day you helped me at the station." Her words made me feel a bit self-conscious. Since losing my wife, I hadn't had many opportunities to connect with someone on a personal level. But the time I spent with Sayaka gradually thawed my frozen heart. Our lunchtime meetings at the cafe became a small refuge for us. It was a precious time where we could escape the heavy atmosphere of the office and share our thoughts. One day, Sayaka showed me her father's keepsake brooch. This brooch was something my father cherished. He gave it to me the day before he passed away. It was the late CEO's favorite item, wasn't it? Yes, he told me to take good care of it. At that moment, her phone rang. As soon as she saw the screen, her expression hardened. "It's my brother. I have to go back." As I watched her leave, Hidaka leaned in and whispered, "Ito, please protect Sayaka." It would take some time before I fully understood the meaning of those words. One weekend afternoon, a gentle breeze blew through a suburban park. The trees were lush and green, and the sunlight softly illuminated Sayaka's profile as she sat on a bench. Hidaka couldn't make it due to an urgent matter, so it was just the two of us today. In the open and refreshing setting, Sayaka's demeanor was noticeably brighter. "My father loved this park. He used to bring me here on weekends. I've heard the late CEO was very devoted to his family." "Yes, even with his busy schedule, he always made time for us." As the wind brushed past us, Sayaka began to share memories of her father. Despite being a company leader, he never broke promises with his daughter. Unlike her brother Takahiko, he was a warm-hearted person who even cared about the families of his employees. "But my father passed away so suddenly." Her words faltered, so I reached into the paper bag on the bench and took out our lunch. "Let's eat before it gets cold." When I offered her a handmade sandwich, Sayaka accepted it with a delighted smile. "Did you make this yourself, Ito?" "Yes. When my wife was alive, we often went on picnics." "You talk about your wife quite a bit." "Do I? It might be because I found someone I can share those memories with." As I watched Sayaka enjoying the sandwich, memories of my wife overlapped with the moment. At the same time, a new warmth began to fill my heart. In one corner of the park, children were playing tag. Sayaka's gaze softened, radiating maternal tenderness as she watched them. "I wonder if Koichi will have days like this to play too." At that moment, her phone rang again. When she saw the name on the screen, her expression darkened. "Is it the Tsukishiro CEO?" "Yes, he's been monitoring me more closely lately." She didn't answer the call, instead ending it without a word. It seemed like a small act of defiance. "There's still a mystery surrounding my father's death." Her sudden confession took my breath away. The day before he passed, my father tried to entrust me with some important documents, but before he could. She couldn't finish her sentence. The phone rang again, and this time, Sayaka stood up, resigned. "I have to go back now. Thank you so much for today." Her words lingered heavily in my chest as I watched her leave. The truth about her father's death, the documents he tried to entrust to her, and her brother's increasingly strict surveillance. The next day, Hidaka shared some unexpected information with me. When my father was the late CEO's secretary, important company documents went missing several times. Missing? Yes, especially after Takahiko Tsukishiro started getting involved in management. Hidaka's gaze towards Sayaka carried a sense of duty inherited from her father. A few days later, I received an email from Sayaka. There's something odd about my father's keepsake brooch. As I pondered the cryptic message, Hidaka approached me. Ito, have you figured out how to use the necklace? Touching the recording-enabled necklace around my neck, she gave me a meaningful look. Yes, I've kept it ready to use at any time. Let's protect Sayaka together. As the sun began to set over the office, we nodded silently to one another, preparing for what lay ahead. The small moments of peace we shared felt like the calm before a storm. Yet, the serene moments with Sayaka lit a small flame in our hearts. Yesterday, Sayaka confided in me. She discovered a tiny USB drive hidden within her father's brooch. However, she couldn't access it because she didn't know the password. My father always kept copies of important documents. The clue must be in the archives. But searching while under the CEO's watchful eye is dangerous. I know, but I can't turn back now. Her determined eyes left me speechless. Understood. I'll help. The sound of torrential rain pelting the windows echoed through the archives. Tasked with an urgent client meeting, I used the opportunity to request access to the archives and quietly snuck Sayaka in. While I worked on documents nearby, Sayaka sifted through the archives. I could see her carefully examining old files and occasionally jotting down notes. Hidaka had brought us boxed lunches, which we quietly ate together. In the stillness of the archive, with only the sound of rain, Sayaka began sharing memories of her father. My father always said the company exists for its employees and their families. My brother rejects that belief. The CEO seems to treat the company as his personal property. The day before he died, my father argued with my brother. The next morning, he was found collapsed in his study. Before she could continue, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Takahiko, instructing her to return home. I'll walk you back. Under the cover of umbrellas, we walked in silence, tension hanging in the air. Rain-drenched street trees painted the twilight city in a dreamlike hue. Ito, if anything happens, please take care of this child. Her words were drowned out by the roar of a passing car engine. But her intention was clear. The next day, I received an urgent message from Hidaka. My father left critical testimony. It's related to the late CEO's death. Just then, angry shouts echoed from the CEO's office. How many times do I have to say it? Destroy all the documents we're looking for. The recording-enabled necklace faithfully captured his words. As I exchanged a glance with Hidaka, Sayaka suddenly sprinted down the hallway. When I caught up to her, she was standing on the rooftop of the company building. Bathed in the golden light of the sunset after the rain, she looked even more fragile. I have to protect my father's dream. Let's protect it together. As she gently grasped my outstretched hand, the warmth of her touch strengthened my resolve. Hidaka, Sayaka, tomorrow, everything will be revealed. The three of us nodded silently. The evening sky seemed to cradle our hope for the future. That night, I received an email from Sayaka. I opened my father's brooch. The password was my birthday. The truth was finally beginning to move. The air in the executive board room the following morning was heavy with tension. An emergency meeting had been called, bringing together the heads of all departments. 5 minutes past the scheduled start time, Takahiko Tsukishiro entered the room. Unlike his usual calm demeanor, the CEO walked in with a stern expression, flanked by several unfamiliar men. They appeared to be from the legal or audit departments, judging by their demeanor. Their presence, unusual for a regular board meeting, added to the weight in the room. "Thank you all for coming. I have a significant announcement to make." The screen displayed the company's financial statements. Revenue was up 120% year over year, and operating profit was steadily rising. At first glance, the company appeared to be thriving. The upward trending graphs and strong numbers reflected Tsukishiro Group's apparent success. The trust and achievements built by previous leaders seemed secure. But all of that was about to be overturned by the report that was about to unfold. A heavy silence enveloped the room as Takahiko's voice cut through like ice. "However, these numbers hide a significant issue. We have had a case of internal information leakage." The room erupted into murmurs. Board members exchanged uneasy glances, struggling to conceal their agitation. The morning sunlight streaming through the windows illuminated their anxious faces. The company's core philosophy of valuing each employee and their families had been its pride, passed down from the late CEO. That trust was now on the verge of crumbling. "Our new business plans and confidential information have been leaked, possibly reaching competitors." The screen displayed several internal documents. New business proposals, non-disclosure agreements with clients, and development plans for new products. These were undoubtedly highly classified materials. "We are starting an internal investigation. Those guilty of misconduct or leaks will face strict consequences." The CEO's cold tone sent a shiver through the room as his gaze briefly landed on me. There was something in his eyes, some hidden intent. As I left the meeting room, Hidaka approached me. Her expression carried a rare tension. "Ito, this is a trap. The CEO might have found out that Sayaka opened the brooch yesterday. The timing is certainly suspicious." From down the hallway, a group of security staff approached. Their footsteps echoed ominously as they advanced, clad in black suits. At the front was a man who seemed to be one of Takahiko's close aides. "You go, Ito. Please come with us to the CEO's office." I gave Hidaka a small nod and followed the security personnel. They led me down an unfamiliar corridor to a floor separate from the usual meeting rooms. Behind a heavy door, Takahiko Tsukishiro was waiting. The room, rarely used, was a special reception area. From the windows of the high-rise building, the Tokyo skyline stretched out in view, framed by luxurious furnishings. Yet now, the room carried the oppressive weight of an interrogation chamber. "Ito, let me ask you directly. Why did you approach my sister?" His tone was soft, but his sharp gaze pinned me in place. "It was a chance encounter. I only helped her when she collapsed at the station." "Is that so? Then why did you continue interacting with her afterward? Was it to investigate her personal affairs?" There was a coldness in his words, as though this were a formal interrogation. The security personnel standing behind him began inching closer to me. "I had your background checked. An interesting career, to say the least." He placed a document on the desk. It was my resume. However, details had been altered to include fabricated career highlights. "You launched new ventures in your last job. Could that experience have been used to infiltrate our company?" "That's absurd. Why were you caught snooping for classified information after moving to sales? Our cameras recorded your suspicious actions." The large screen in the room began displaying footage from the archives. There I was, searching through documents with Sayaka. Every move had been meticulously monitored. "My sister is pregnant. I don't want her to worry unnecessarily. You will submit your resignation effective today. The weight of the recording-enabled necklace around my neck felt heavier than ever. This might be my last chance. Before that, may I ask one question? What is it? Did the late CEO really die of natural causes? For a split second, the CEO's expression froze. It was the first crack in his otherwise perfectly composed facade. What are you implying? My father died of a heart attack. Sayaka told me. She said you argued with him the night before he died. My sister talks too much. At that moment, the door to the room opened. Sayaka stood there, clutching her father's keepsake brooch in her hand. Brother, that's enough. Sayaka, why are you here? I've seen what's inside father's brooch. I know everything. What nonsense are you spouting? The truth about father's death, the company's hidden accounts, all of it was recorded. The color drained from Takahiko's face. Through the open door, police officers in uniform were visible. Father knew everything. He knew about your embezzlement of company funds and your illegal dealings. Silence. The CEO stood up, his hand raised toward his sister. I instinctively shielded Sayaka, and a sharp pain shot through my shoulder. At that moment, the police entered the room. A commanding voice echoed through the space. Takahiko Tsukishiro, you are under arrest for breach of trust. Outside the window, light rain had begun to fall. With the truth fully revealed, the Tsukishiro Group was about to take its first steps toward a new beginning. The shocking news of the CEO's arrest spread through the company like wildfire. Yet, it was not an ending but the start of something new. Soon, the Tsukishiro Group would undergo a reorganization and prepare for a fresh start. And for Sayaka and me, our story would also move forward. A week had passed since Takahiko Tsukishiro's arrest. The company was in turmoil, with a media frenzy surrounding the incident. The scramble to determine a successor CEO was intense, and rumors swirled. Meanwhile, I remained buried in my work in the sales department. The fallout from Takahiko's arrest hit the company hard. One after another, inquiries from business partners poured in, and my days were filled with explanations and apologies. As I left a client's meeting room, my smartphone buzzed with an incoming call from an unfamiliar number. Hello, this is Ito. There is something I wish to discuss with you. Could you meet me tonight at the lounge in the Imperial Hotel? The voice on the other end belonged to Kato, Takahiko's right-hand man. Although he had avoided arrest, his position within the company had become precarious. I arrived at the Imperial Hotel at the appointed time. The luxurious lounge was enveloped in the quiet of the night, and the Tokyo skyline sparkled outside the windows. We've been expecting you. At the table sat Kato and several other executives, all known to be close to Takahiko. We've asked you here because we need your help regarding the future of the Tsukishiro Group. Kato began, sipping from his glass. The incident with Takahiko has severely damaged the company. At this rate, our operations may become unsustainable. And what exactly do you expect from me? We would like to use your connection with Sayaka. I immediately grasped the meaning behind his words. They intended to leverage Sayaka to consolidate their control over the company. We want to ask Sayaka to assume the role of CEO, even temporarily, and for you to serve as her advisor. I refuse. Kato's expression darkened. The other executives turned their gazes toward me in unison. I urge you to reconsider. We've also looked into your past. A photograph was placed on the table. It was of my late wife, Chiharu. The cost of your wife's medical treatments must have been significant. Surely, the debt from those days still lingers. Suppressing the urge to curse, I stood quietly. Leave my wife's name out of this. If you leave the company now, you'll lose everything: your position, your income, and even your relationship with Sayaka. That night, I returned to my apartment and opened an unmarked envelope that had arrived. Inside were several photographs of me meeting with Sayaka. The next morning, on my way to the office, I received a call from Hidaka. We have a problem. People in the company are starting to question your relationship with Sayaka. It's Kato and his group, isn't it? That's not all. My father's documents. Someone has taken them. The situation was rapidly deteriorating. Within the company, the number of suspicious eyes on me increased. It was the result of Takahiko's close aides skillfully manipulating information. During lunch, I met with Sayaka at our usual cafe. She looked tired, but her composure remained intact. I heard about last night. Sorry for causing you worry. It's because of me that you're in such a difficult position. No, this is my choice. Outside the window, light rain had started to fall. Sayaka tightly gripped her father's keepsake brooch. My father never let go of this brooch until the very end. I'm sure there's something important inside. What about the contents of the USB? It's encrypted, so I can't access everything yet, but I've been able to start deciphering parts of it. At that moment, her phone rang. Seeing the number displayed on the screen, her expression tensed. Another call from the board of directors. The pressure was mounting on Sayaka as well. Voices urging her to take over as CEO, efforts to expedite the division of the inheritance. Amid all these swirling agendas, she refused to give up. We'll fight together. I took her hand, conveying warmth to her trembling fingers. A few days later, the situation took an unexpected turn. It was discovered that Hidaka's father had left behind critical testimony. As the late CEO's secretary, my father saw everything: Takahiko's fraudulent dealings, the hidden ledgers. The testimony had been preserved on a recorded tape. However, before it could be made public, a new obstacle arose. In the company hallway, I ran into Kato. Let me make one final proposal. My decision hasn't changed. I see. Then, take a look at this. The document he handed me contained detailed personal information about my family, my parents' current address, my sister's workplace. Everything had been thoroughly investigated. Unfortunate accidents can happen at any time, you know. It was a threat, a blatant intimidation. But I couldn't back down now. Do your worst, but be prepared for the consequences. The recording-enabled necklace captured this exchange in full. At dusk, I received an urgent call from Sayaka. Ito, I've decrypted the USB. It contained evidence of Takahiko's breach of trust, the hidden ledgers, records of illegal transactions, and the truth about my father's death. It's all there. Now we can reveal everything. But just as we were ready to act, an unforeseen event occurred. Someone broke into Sayaka's home and stole critical documents. It's okay. The real USB is stored somewhere safe. Mid-sentence, her face contorted in pain. Tsukishiro. My stomach. Please, take me to the hospital. As the ambulance siren wailed, I held her hand tightly. That night at the hospital felt agonizingly long. In the quiet waiting room, a call came from Hidaka. Kato and his group are making their move. They are bringing a critical proposal to tomorrow's board meeting. Do we have any countermeasures? With the evidence my father left, your recordings, and the contents of the USB, we have a chance. The next morning, before heading to the office, I visited the hospital room. Sayaka had regained her composure. The baby is fine. I think my father must have been protecting us. I'm so relieved. Ito, I have one more favor to ask. She handed me an envelope containing a handwritten letter from the late CEO. The board meeting began at 10 a.m. Kato's proposal was to split the company and sell off its operations, a plan that essentially dismantled it. This proposal is the result of careful deliberation, Kato declared. At that moment, I quietly stood up. Before proceeding, there is something I would like everyone to hear. One by one, the evidence was revealed. The recordings, Hidaka's father's testimony, and the decrypted contents of the USB. The expressions of the board members began to change. Kato's face turned pale. Finally, the late CEO's letter was read aloud. After my death, the truth will emerge, and this company will return to its true purpose, serving employees and their families. Kato's schemes were completely dismantled. The police investigation intensified, leading to more arrests. Back at the hospital, I reported the outcome to Sayaka, who smiled peacefully. Thank you for protecting my father's legacy. Outside the window, a bright blue sky stretched overhead for the first time in a long while. Having weathered every storm, a new morning was dawning. 3 months after the incident, the Tsukishiro Group was undergoing a major transformation. With Kato's arrest and the collapse of the shadowy regime, the company was finally free of its long-standing darkness. Day by day, the atmosphere within the company became lighter and more refreshing. Under the new leadership, Sayaka joined the board of directors. The CEO position was taken over by a seasoned executive who had long understood the late CEO's vision. The philosophy of bringing happiness to people, championed by the late CEO, was once again at the core of the company. In a meeting room bathed in morning sunlight, discussions about a new project were underway. I had returned to the planning and development department and was fully immersed in my work. Beside me was Hidaka. Ito, what do you think about the direction of this proposal? It's looking good. I think we're on the right track. The development of new products was progressing smoothly. The employees' faces were bright, and the oppressive atmosphere from before had completely vanished. Employees who had taken leave were steadily returning to work, and the company was regaining its vitality. Yamada's son, as promised, was hired. Despite his disability, he was steadily learning his tasks at his own pace. The surrounding employees naturally created a supportive environment, ensuring he felt encouraged and included. One evening, Sayaka reached out to me just before returning to work from maternity leave. She said she had a new proposal to discuss. I want to bring my father's vision to life, she said. Her idea was to build a welfare facility for employees and their families. The plan included a daycare center and an elder care facility, offering comprehensive support to workers and their loved ones. It's a wonderful idea, I said. My father always believed a company should value its people. I want to carry that belief forward. In her arms, 3-month-old Koichi was peacefully asleep, his gentle breath signaling the beginning of a new era. Hidaka's father also sent a message of encouragement from the hospital where he was recovering. Freed from years of burdens, he had regained his health. The company's transformation was earning praise from business partners. Trust had deepened, and new projects were flowing in steadily. One weekend, I joined Sayaka and Koichi for a trip to a suburban park. The autumn breeze was pleasantly cool as we wandered among the trees. Ito, where do you think we're headed from here? She asked. I hope we can walk this new path together, I replied. Yes, Koichi would be happy about that too. Since losing my wife, my frozen heart had begun to thaw bit by bit. A new sense of family was slowly taking root. As we sat on a park bench, the sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues. Koichi's tiny hand gripped my finger tightly. I wanted to cherish and protect this warmth forever. With that resolve in my heart, a new chapter of our lives quietly and unmistakably began. The late CEO's vision of bringing happiness to people had become a guiding principle in my own life. Now, step by step, we were bringing it to fruition. As dusk fell, Sayaka took out her father's keepsake brooch. Illuminated by the setting sun, it glowed with a gentle radiance. It's amazing how this small brooch has changed our lives, she mused. Yes, but perhaps it was all meant to be, I replied. Koichi stirred awake, reaching out with his small hands, as if grasping for the future. Challenges surely lay ahead. But I no longer feared them. With my loved ones by my side, I resolved to move forward boldly. The soft evening light highlighted Sayaka's face. Now free of past sorrows, wearing a serene smile, Koichi looked up at his mother and gave a sweet, cheerful grin. I wished this moment could last forever. Holding both their hands gently, I savored the quiet happiness we shared. The seasons transitioned from autumn to winter, and the city began donning its Christmas decorations. The Tsukishiro Group building was bathed in a warm glow. In the lobby, a large Christmas tree stood adorned, and smiles filled the space. Yamada's son, who had been hired, was happily helping with the decorations despite his disabilities. Ito, I'm excited about the new project starting next year, Hidaka said. Yay, let's make it a success. Plans for the welfare facility had reached the concrete planning stage, with construction set to begin in spring. In the evening, after finishing work, I went to pick up Sayaka and Koichi. At the daycare, Koichi's cheeks glowed with happiness as he slept peacefully. Thank you for picking him up, Sayaka said. No problem. I hope I can continue to support you like this, I replied. She returned a warm smile. As street lights began to illuminate the city, the three of us walked home together. Walking beside Sayaka, holding Koichi, I quietly embraced a sense of happiness. This was the beginning of a new life. I felt certain of it. That Tsukishiro Group, having overcome its hardships, was truly realizing the vision of bringing happiness to people. And each of our lives was beginning to move forward with new hope. The legacy left by the late CEO was undeniably being passed on to the next generation. As Koichi grew, this story, too, would embark on its next chapter.